Good afternoon. Welcome to the SCV Chamber's COVID-19 Resource Webinar Series. I'm Peter Warda with the SCV Chamber and will be hosting today's webinar. We will have a question and answer session at the conclusion of the presentation. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question feature located at the bottom right of your control panel. Simply click on the drop-down where it says question and you may begin typing. Press enter when done. Your question will go to the host. As a reminder, please feel free to send your questions throughout the webinar. If during the call you are experiencing difficulty, please email hello@scvchamber.com. We are monitoring that email live during the webinar to assist participants. We will begin momentarily. For those of you who have just joined us, we will begin momentarily. Thank you again for joining the SCV Chamber's COVID-19 Resource Webinar Series. This is the 7th in our series. I'm Peter Warda with the SCV Chamber and will be hosting today's webinar. In addition to the Chamber's webinar series, the Chamber has a comprehensive COVID-19 resource page, which is constantly updated. Please go to scvchamber.com and click on the COVID-19 menu item. You can find details on HR compliance, unemployment benefits, and business disaster finance options, among many other vital resources. Please visit our events page to view and register for our upcoming webinars. As we begin our program, we want to thank our presenters, Paul and Lisa Raggio with One True North, for helping put together today's important Chamber webinar. Today's webinar will discuss a 12-step program, which will cover different types of actions that can be taken immediately for your business, as well as what steps to take to ensure your business is safeguarded during the recovery stage. It's no secret that business owners can't even determine how the day will end, given the minute-by-minute changes we are all facing in the midst of COVID-19. With rapid updates coming your way on the hour, business owners are struggling not just with legality, but with keeping their businesses afloat during this time. Please welcome Paul and Lisa.
Thanks, Peter. And Lisa and I want to tell you how appreciative we are of the Chamber, and you're doing so much to help the community, not only in providing resources, but valuable webinars like this. And if many of you listening are like us, we're finding that there's so many different webinars and resources, it's almost overwhelming at this point in time. But we hope to provide you with some actionable items out of this webinar that you can put in place today to help your businesses grow.
Hi, folks. We're grateful for the opportunity to present this webinar today. And a little bit of background, One True North Leadership and Business Coaching Solutions is a veteran-owned and family-operated business in Santa Clarita. And in short, our vision is to empower business owners and organizational leaders to find and live their One True North. So our intention today for Paul and I on this webinar is to help anyone on this call find their way through this current COVID crisis and its economic threat. And as Paul said, have some substantive action items to help you and your business.
So that's a picture of my sister and me, and just a little bit about us. We're leadership and certified business coaches. We own a franchise called Action Coach, and Action Coach is the largest business services coaching franchisor in the world. It has it's in over 81 states, has over 1,000 coaches, and it has just tremendous resources in terms of business basics. Our founder, Brad Sugars, you can find him all over the social media right now, and he's doing everything he can to help businesses, and principally small and medium-sized businesses, survive this crisis. We also take a lot of pride in being mentors, and that started with me early on. I'm Army retiree. After 26 years, I retired as a colonel, and then I was hired to run multiple businesses for a large corporation. I was on the East Coast doing that. All the companies I operated were in some type of security-related business line. And my background being in the Army and then running those businesses for critical infrastructure sites throughout the United States. We were in 41 states and 2 countries. I have a deep and rich history in contingency operations and crisis management.
And we, like you on this call, we are small business owners. So Paul and I own One True North, and then my husband and his family have owned and operated Patterson's Collision Center in Santa Clarita for almost the last 2 decades. So we feel everything that you're feeling as well as we navigate through this. Paul has his MBA with an emphasis in finance. I have my MPA, which is a master's in public administration with an emphasis in human dynamics of leadership. And lastly, we have a cross-sector approach. So I continue to wear the hat of executive director of the National Firefighter Cancer Support Network and have worked with military or first responders for the last decade. So I think that is creates us to be heavily influenced by crisis management training and being prepared more in the mentality of a first responder. But in this case, as a business coach, our focus is on the small to medium-sized business owners. And last but not least, we are dedicated to the philosophy of servant leadership. And like many of you on the call, we are community service focused, and we believe in a spirit of volunteerism.
I was fortunate enough to go to the U.S. Army War College, Carlisle, Pennsylvania in the 90s. It's the senior executive school for all services. And at that college, it's a year-long college, and at that college you study national security and directions really about how warfighting will be looked at in the future. General Gordon Sullivan was our chief of staff of the Army at the time. And he was getting frustrated because a lot of the Army planners were still fighting the Soviets in Eastern Europe. And we hadn't fought a fight like that since World War II. Of course, Vietnam was a very different war. And then he was projecting forward the type of environment we would be in, which would be a volatile, uncertain, complex asymmetrical environment that we are expected to fight and win the wars of the future. And he said, our current doctrine doesn't support that. And a lot of old school Army was saying at the time, well, when we get to that point where we fight something asymmetrical, we hope that we'll get through that. And he coined a phrase that hope is not a method, but leading, thinking, planning, and then taking action is. So that certainly is a lesson that's stuck with me, and I've used that throughout my military career as well as in my business career, when we were not doing the planning, but we were doing a lot of hoping to get us through something. So I'm bringing that back out today, is that hope is not a method, and it's not going to help you get through any type of panic, and it's not going to be a plan. So you have to change your mindset. And one of the other skills we were taught in the military is that you have to be able to adapt, improvise, and overcome. And generally speaking, any plan that you put into execution is never going to turn out the way the plan was written, but your ability to adapt to it, improvise, and then overcome when you encounter obstacles is. So right now, people are expecting business owners, our community leaders, our county, state, and national leaders, they want to see someone leading, projecting confidence and conviction. And we know so much more today than we did 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks from now, we'll know a lot more than what we know today. And so this knowledge, being able to get through the uncertainty, is a demonstration of control. And it's probably one of the most important principles in leadership that you can demonstrate, is that you have control of the situation the way it is today. But the conditions have changed and we're moving out. And one of the first things we taught soldiers and even my security officers when I was running the multiple businesses was, when you encounter danger, you can't freeze. You have to move and you have to act. So the takeaway from this is that hope is not a method.
So with that, step one, the greatest action item that you could do if you haven't done already is to communicate. Start communicating. Don't be hesitant. I think we meet a lot of business owners and organizational leaders who say, I don't want to really bother anybody. I think we're all in crisis, and they're not sure of what to communicate, so they're paralyzed and they don't. And we would say that's probably the worst thing that you can do. Because if you're not communicating, someone else is, to your clients, to your customers, to your vendors, to your suppliers. So communicate. It can be a simple message just stating that you are with them, that you're thinking about them. If you are open for business, it's communicating that you're open for business and you're an essential business. If you're not, you can tell them how you're working remotely, but you're checking in, and it can be as simple as that. We're checking in to see how you're doing. We're here for you, and we're thinking about you. You want to also have that be a positive message. So regardless of how you're feeling at any given time, the messaging that you put out there is to be positive. So you may write down what you're feeling, but then rephrase those words so that they have a positive tone in what you're messaging. And we've been working with some business owners that we got to go through that newsletter or go through that post that they're doing a couple times to make sure that it's got a positive tone to it. And then we want to make sure that we're being clear and direct and purposeful and inspirational in our messaging. So rewrite and condense and be concise in what you're putting out. And then, an actionable item would be, perhaps you want to create a tagline in your signature block right now that you message out. Perhaps you want to have, if you're using social media, that you're consistent in the hashtags that you use that are being inspirational and uplifting. But positive communication is first and foremost what you want to do. And if you haven't been communicating, start communicating now. It can be brief, but address what's going on and let people know that you are in this with them.
If you have a team, one of the most important things you can do right now is be there for them. And Lisa talked about communication in the last slide. It's so important that you over communicate, that you demonstrate care and concern for your employees. Now, even though you may have had to furlough some of them, if you want them to return, it's important that you stay in touch with them. And they want to see that you're stepping into the arena. They want your engagement, and they want your care. So for example, if you have employees, and whether they've been furloughed or not, you may be communicating with them virtually. If you aren't, you should be. And if you're communicating with them virtually, how are you doing it? You should be able to establish some standards, whether you have a morning virtual huddle or you have a daily check-in with your employees, and maybe it's done either by the phone, or so many people can have access to Zoom or go to webinar now. There's so many different, very inexpensive products that you can employ in order to stay in touch. But they're looking to have some type of normalcy, and normalcy is provided in standards. That helps them get their mindset right, and it helps them turn whatever fear they may have into focusing on what needs to be done today, first to get through the virus with both their family as well as in their business, but also to help focus on what's to come afterwards. And there will be a very positive and opportunistic afterwards. It's also a time where you personally can be re-engaged in self-education and or training. I can't tell you how many times when I was running businesses before that my senior leadership, and they're always avoided their own self-training. And this is something that you do because you think that operationally you have to always be engaged. Well, you have the time now. Take the time to either improve your own education in regards to your business, your industry, the sector that you're operating out of, what you may think your future competitors look like. And it's also an opportunity for you to train and or retrain your employees and really invest the time now that you may have. We have encouraged many of our clients to keep as many employees as you can, if those are the employees that you want. It's important because there will be a recovery, and the faster that you can recover your own business operations with the employees that you have, the sooner that you're going to be back in the black. So the takeaways from this is that you want to step into the arena and be engaged, and that should have happened already. If not, it needs to happen now. Over communicate with your employees, other stakeholders. Project optimism in what you're doing, and then take the time to educate yourself and train any of the employees that you may have.
This is a slide that we found on LinkedIn, and we haven't figured out who it's attributed to, but we think it's golden to be using right now. And it starts with the first question of, who do I want to be during COVID-19? And another way to look at this is, how do I want to be remembered during this time? This is an opportunity to really be thinking about a growth mindset versus scarcity mindset. So we've seen what a scarcity mindset looks like, because I still don't have toilet paper. I still haven't been able to find any toilet paper. And yes, there's water that's out there again, but scarcity mindset is what drives people thinking that there will not be any more of something. And so they're going to make sure that they get it first, and not thinking in terms of a growth mindset. So this is something that I have printed out. I put it in our home. I put it in the kitchen because it's the first thing that we see when we walk into the room and the last thing that we see when we walk out. And we can all start to be mindful of how we can give ourselves permission to grow. So it's okay that if you're not there yet at the growth zone, I'm not all the way there yet either, but it's something to indicate that we're making our way through something and an end goal of how we want to be. And this is an opportunity in order to get to that growth mindset, is to give yourself permission to grow, to think about this being a period of progress over perfection, and to practice new habits. And there's an abundance of things out there now to help us in regards to meditating that are free resources that if you did a search on your app, you'll find meditating, building resiliency. And I will say reflection, a part of learning, whether it's personal or professional, is taking the time to reflect. And your reflection time is an opportunity to learn and to incorporate what it is that you've experienced so that you can grow. So I hope that this is something that you can all take a screenshot of it and use it if you already don't have it.
Everything runs in cycles, and we're using the analogy like winter, spring, summer, and fall. You have some certainty those cycles are going to occur when it comes to weather patterns in our country. Same thing happens in business. I ran 8 companies at one time, and all of them were in a different cycle or stage in life. Some were early in their life, some were late in their life, some were plateaued, but they were in cycles. Military operations are the same. You can go from a planning stage to a pre-deployment stage, deployment stage, in-theater operations, combat stage, post-combat, pre-deployment or post-deployment, and then you can go to military civil operations. So the point is that cycles are a part of the way we operate on a daily basis. COVID has been interjected into one of our cycles, but we know that this is going to pass. We have some level of confidence that we're going to get back to some level of normalcy, not the same, but some level of normalcy. What we don't know is when, but we'll adapt and there will be new normalcy. Our federal, state, and local governments know this. They're doing what they can to legislate relief for businesses. They know they have to do that in order to stimulate the economy. So there's certainty in that. There's certainty that the stock market will recover. It has always rebounded after crises. And you can be certain that the elections are going to take place on time. And the one thing you can be certain of today is that your business has changed, and it's changed forever. So you have an opportunity to make it better once you get out of the recovery. So the takeaways from this are: your business has changed. For some, it's been minimal, and for others, it's been drastic. We understand that. And you have to think through, how has that changed, and what you need to do in order to take advantage of future opportunities to recover your business and then grow it again. And that requires thinking and planning.
So building a strong mindset is so important, especially during a time like this. Here's the really good news about our brains. They're a muscle, and they continue to grow, and they can be developed. And so if you don't have a strong mindset and that's positively focused, you actually can do exercises, and there's tools that you can incorporate so that you can strengthen your brain muscle, basically. One of the ways that we do that at this time is through daily rituals. So in times of crisis, it's very easy to get lost in the energy around that, which is very chaotic. Daily rituals are an opportunity to get centered, and this is whether you're in your home life or whether you're in your business. So it's something that you can incorporate into your family life, but in your work life, you can still maintain daily rituals that you're doing and checking in and communicating that either if you have 1 employee or if you have 25 employees. The other thing that you can do, and many of you have probably found this, if you're on this webinar, you're taking advantage of the learning and growing opportunities that are here right now. We've said this before, we'll continue to say it. We, like you, are in COVID grad school, and we are getting a workout. We're getting a workout because we're taking advantage of any opportunity there is in regards to businesses, business coaching, leadership, and we're also learning about those things that come to our attention in regards to the stimulus package and the variety of things that are being offered. So we continue to learn and grow, and it's important also to have some space and time in which you allow yourself to digest that as well, because you can overtax the brain muscle and then you just kind of stop. So you need to be able to be replenishing those times. But this is an opportunity. It is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity for growth. And part of having that growth mindset we talked about a few minutes ago was, where can you find the small wins each day, right? And what can you do yourself as the business owner, and what can you share with your team on a regular basis that you ask, what one thing are you most proud of in the last few days? Sometimes just making it through the day in a time like this is something to be proud of. But look at the small wins and acknowledge them for yourself and others. Turn off the news, get the information that you need to be a responsible citizen, and then turn it off. And then think in terms of resiliency, right? Focus on what you can do, not what you can't. There may be a lot of things you can't, but there are a few things that you can, and those are the things that you can grow and use for your better. And this is a time in which, if you're thinking with the resiliency mindset and can, you will very likely find a unique selling proposition out of this when you're looking across the board of what it is that you need to be working on with your business during this time.
Okay, a lot of information on this, and we've been asked in the past, why would we show something like this? Well, this is really the foundation of your business, and so I'm going to use an example to help describe it. Your why is, why are you in business? And we've had a number of discussions with clients and prospective clients since we started our business in June. And this is the first thing we ask them is, why are you in business? What is it that prompted you to get into it? Because the why leads to your be, who you want to be, times the do, what you have to do in order to have the money that you want to make. We follow Simon Sinek. He's a modern day business philosopher, and he often comments that customers buy from others because of their why, not their how or what. So the why is likened to the foundation of your business, much like it would be a cement slab to a house. Then you have your purpose and points of culture, which would really serve to be your posts and beams in your house. You can see the quote from the Harvard Business Review September-October issue there. They did a recent study stating the importance of purpose and being able to describe what that purpose is in your business, and then not only vocalize it to your team, but also to your external customers and stakeholders. Points of culture are the values. What is it that you stand for in terms of values, business ethics, and the morals that you want in terms of conducting business? Then if you get to the drywall portion of your business, that's the vision and mission. And being able to establish what is your vision, and vision could be anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Your mission is, what does your operation look like today, and what does it need to do in order to be successful? And then your goals and objectives really serve as a way to put the interior of the house together. And they are measured by resources, whether it be financial resources, human capital, capacity, the knowledge of the business, and it's a way that you actually derive your budget and your future forecast. Your goals ought to be specific, measurable, attainable, and results oriented, and named to a time frame in order to be effective. We use this model in our coaching with clients, and it's foundational to us. And this is a time where you can really focus on your why. And if you don't have a vision or mission statement, create it now. If you have them, it may be time to review them, repurpose them, and look how applicable they're going to be in the future once you get to the recovery. But while you have the time, this is how you build your business. This is basic business principles and 101, and we strongly encourage you to do this. And we would do this whether COVID-19 was here or not. This would be the starting point for the future growth of your business. So the takeaway from this is to actually get into this and do the planning.
Yes, as Paul said, plan for 90 days, and also be open to be planning for 30 days. You know, Paul and I live by a quarterly plan, and that's what we guide our clients to be working on, is through a growth club that we have, 90-day business planning. Right now, I'll tell you, we're working with a 30-day business plan too. We're looking out for the next 4 weeks and laying out our goals and objectives, because as you're experiencing, things are changing every single day. So as we say, survive first and then rebound and thrive. You know, the best thing that you could do right now, we talked about at the beginning, is first positively communicating, right? And we're in survival mode. So we hope that all of you have taken advantage of what's being offered now with loans and grants. And I would suggest that you look to the Chamber of Commerce, actually, who's done an excellent job of posting a lot of resources that you can be looking into. I know for myself, I have called the phone numbers. I've looked into some of the resources for the businesses that we have, and we've created a COVID-19 page on One True North based upon what we've experienced with getting positive feedback and actually being able to execute things. So I encourage you first to make sure that you are taking advantage of what it is that's being offered to you. And then I would start to think about planning, because it's a way in which you can be empowered. In a situation in which you don't have a lot of control, this is one way in which you gain a lot of control. And the difference between those businesses that are going to survive in the long run and those that are going to thrive are the ones that invest in the planning. So we would say to be looking at your Q2 and your Q3, really giving them this SMART test. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they results oriented? Do they have a time frame? Thinking about what is it that you will market and sell. You may be postponing to market and sell things in the next 2 to 3 months, but you could be marketing right now and making connections in what you need to do, so that when it comes time to sell, that prospective client has already been approached by you in a way in which you're doing it with purpose and care and compassion. And definitely be considering service over sales. Now is more of a time to serve than it is a time to sell, but if you're able to be responsible in what you do to connect with people, that's going to be a good return on your energy. And then be thinking in terms overall of planning. We've put off planning, most of us, because we've had our gear shift in operations at about 80% of our time in operations. If now you don't end up planning, when will you? So think in terms of 90 days. We're offering on May 1st a 90-day business planning session virtually, and we'll be sending out information in regards to that. But it's a very comprehensive approach. You have a workbook that you can work through, in which you are able to filter through your goals and objectives and lay out what it is that you need to do for the next 30, 60, and 90 days. And we strongly encourage, we believe in coaching, we believe in mentoring, we believe in peer advisors. Be seeking, quite frankly, us and others in the community that can help guide you through it. We offer a free strategy session right now, and we know of a lot of other coaches and mentors that are offering free services as well.
You know, in every crisis, there are opportunities, and I'll go back to my military years again. If you're in a combat theater, you know, you're likely either on the offense or you're in the defense. And when you're in the offense, you're planning to transition to the defense. And when you're in the defense, you're planning to transition to the offense. Similarly, you'll see football teams do the same thing. When they're in the defense, the guys up in the booth are planning for the offense. And same if you're in the offense, the guys in the booth are planning on what to take advantage of in terms of the defense. In all those cases, you're looking for opportunities. And that's one of the things that we recommend that you do now is look for opportunities. There are opportunities during a crisis. There are going to be significant opportunities after this passes. But what we so often discover is that we get in the way of ourselves, and that's what that equation is. D stands for dissatisfaction. That's a multiplication sign times vision, plus F stands for first steps. And it means that you have to have a lot of dissatisfaction times vision and taking your first steps to overcome the resistance that you have. Our founder, Brad Sugars, developed that equation. And it's very important, very powerful and important to understand, because if you are so dissatisfied, you have a vision, you take first steps, you're going to overcome your resistance. Right now, many of you are dissatisfied. Some of you may have a vision, and just as many don't know what first steps to take. That's where Lisa was telling you, you can go to others to get help, whether it be other groups, whether it be other peers, whether it be friends, whether you go to coaches like us, but it should be something that you should be seeking out if you're struggling right now. There's always a question, should you be making big moves versus small pivots? There are significant opportunities now. Many businesses are not going to survive, but they may sell, and you may have the capability and the capacity to buy them. It may be an opportunity for you to increase your market share as soon as the recovery is over. These are things you should be considering now. You should also be looking at the small pivots that you can make right now in order to help your business, or that you may park at this point in time, but you want to take advantage of as soon as the recovery starts. But again, this is time that you ought to be looking at and acting on these things, and then certainly leverage what you have, and then look if there's a scalability factor later to come. So your takeaways from this slide are that you're in the defense right now, and soon you'll be going into the offense again. And what are you doing to position yourself to really exploit the offense? And that's where your leadership becomes essential.
So you're like us, I'm sure, where virtual is the new normal. And I know myself, I've resisted this for a long time, but there's no going back now. So as Paul has said at the beginning, we need to adapt, improvise, and overcome. So first is technology, and taking the time to invest in it and learning how to use it and leverage and maximize it. We have been using and recommending and sending out to our clients something that we've come across by the McChrystal Group, and it's a best practice remote communications plan. And it gives step-by-step advice on tools and structure and remote client and sales management, remote decision making. But there's been a culture shift, and it's not going to go back. We will return to being in person, of course, but we also are going to have to adapt to this new normal of doing business virtually and getting used to it and maximizing it. Human management is so important in regards to this, because you really need to be coming up with a remote communications plan if you have a team. And with that, creating those SOPs. What are the standard operating procedures that you are going to be incorporating with your team? and you can work with them to create this. But basically, you want to be creating normalcy and a routine and be as consistent as possible. So I would encourage you all to be looking at what it is that you could be utilizing with your teams so that there's something that you're doing on a regular basis and you're getting back to a regular routine. Of course, you want to be setting a good example with social distancing. Feeling alone, we're going to see a lot more of this. And, you know, I did 10 years in nonprofit mental health, and I ran a foundation, and it had a multitude of programs that ranged from psychiatric care to joblessness to homelessness, abuse, and substance abuse. And I'll tell you that it's our responsibility as business owners and organizational leaders to be looking at our people as a whole person. And so that means also providing them some mental health resources. There's going to be a lot of people who may adapt to working remotely, but they're still going to feel disconnected and alone. And there's an abundance of resources that I see out there now in regards to mental health. Quick 2-minute videos, connecting people, connecting them to resources. We've put that on our website too, on onetruenorthcoach.com under COVID resources, because when we come across stuff that we've looked at and we think it's value added, we're going to share that with you. So make sure that you check in with your team, make sure that you check in with your suppliers, your vendors. Your team is not just your staff, it's all those people that you work with in order to make your mission happen. Don't abandon meetings. It's very easy. We've seen this with our clients. It's very easy because we are in this flight, fight, freeze mode to say, well, we haven't met yet. We're still trying to adjust. It's okay to not be perfect and try it. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but have the meetings and decide what day of the week you're going to be meeting or what time you're going to meet, even if it's 15-minute check-ins that you're going to do. And then do not abandon also reporting and planning. It's another thing that during this time that can be very easy to forgo. But establish what it is that you need to be looking at in regards to reports, what it is that you need to be allotting for time for planning, and build it into your schedule now. And make sure that you honor that, because that's also important in maintaining our routines and schedules that are going to help us through this. So action item is create a remote communications plan. Whether you're a sole proprietor and you're doing business with your vendors and suppliers, or you have a team of more than 2, create that plan that you can implement and look for resources in which you can do that. And again, look at our website if you'd like, for where we have some things posted to make it easier for you.
I don't think I have to tell you, or at least I don't have to tell you that, you know, stop spending. I'm sure many of you have already started that or are in the midst of that on the non-essentials. Cash is king in business, and it truly is one of those things, whether COVID-19 is here or not, you ought to be always evaluating your cash flow and what your run rate is on your cash flow. If you can extend your credit, do it. The same with the government programs. We've talked to some where they were resistant about applying for it. And we can't understand why. You should be applying for every government program that you're eligible for. And the same with grants. There's a lot of grants floating out there right now that you ought to be looking at and checking resources to see if you can apply for them. Now, look, experience tells us that any large or major government program that's rolled out, I've seen many of these, there are always going to be hiccups when they first get rolled out. It's going to be true with this, and you're reading it in the newspapers and hearing it on the news today, that it's become very frustrating, not only for business owners, but for the banks themselves because of the lack of rules. Well, I assure you the government's going to work through that. So you'll just have to be patient, but the legislation has taken place. It's in law. It's going to be available. It may not be available today or tomorrow, but it will be available in the future. And it's something that every business owner should be taking advantage of today. Another major point is that you ought to be looking at your cost structure. I was a comptroller in the Defense Intelligence Agency for 3 years. And I discovered the importance of numbers while I was there. And when I ran the multiple businesses I had, I can't tell you how important it was to understand your cost structure in order to really create and then thrive a business. So if you haven't been knee deep in your chart of accounts and making sure that you have those identified correctly, if you aren't doing reviews in terms of your costs, both in terms of revenue and expenses, if you aren't operating off of an annual budget, and if you don't have a financial forecast that carries you out at least a year from the execution year of your budget, then you need to work on that now. Every business should have that. It doesn't matter if you're a sole proprietor or if you're a business with, like I had, over 2,000 employees. This is what you ought to be operating off of, and you have the opportunity to either educate yourself now on how to do that, but you should be getting into your numbers and really taking advantage of the time to do that, to evaluate your cost structure. Your business cycle has already slowed down, and undoubtedly you have postponed your major activities. Lisa talked a little bit about it when she was talking about marketing and sales, but we have also run into some clients who said they're a little reticent about selling right now because people don't have money to spend. And so I encourage you to reframe that. If you have something of value and that value is going to help a customer, then you should be selling it. And it may mean you sell it at a discount, or you give another best value opportunity with that. That would be fine. But to help your own business, you ought to be selling. If you can sell, sell. And it doesn't mean that you don't do it compassionately or you change the tone of the sell, but selling your way out of this is just as important while you're in the defense before you transition to the offense. That's how you can act now and survive.
So your marketing must shift, and we are in a time in which, yes, sell, but a mentality of service over sales, right? That you're providing a service to the community in what it is that you're selling, but you also are looking at how you can serve and make a difference in our community right now. So you don't want to stop marketing. You do need to rethink what and how you are messaging and marketing to help your customers continue to do business with you. So remember that you want to message your marketing by design, not default. So if you're not creating something that is unique to you and positive that you're putting out there, then you have other people assuming what it is that you're doing or selling. So be proactive and create a message that you design and that it's positive. It also has to be responsible. And that means that your tone, and if you're putting out messages that are still pre-COVID, then you are tone deaf to what's going on. They really need to have a thread of addressing the COVID issue and letting your client base know that you are aware of what's going on and you're experiencing the same things and you're going through this with them. Practicing emotional intelligence and being socially responsible means that you are being aware and the ability to connect with another person in a way that they feel valued. Paul and I have been, as I said, in COVID grad school, and we are saying yes to a lot of different opportunities to educate. And one of the things that we took part in last week was DISC, a DISC presentation that is a behavior assessment tool that you can that you can use in your businesses to really find out what the natural and adaptive styles of you and your teams are. And the webinar, which was free last week, was very informative about during crisis, how different styles work and how different styles approach one another. So there's free resources right there now to figure out what drives you and what drives your team members and your customers, by the way, because the greater that you understand about emotional intelligence, I guarantee you the greater that you're going to be able to expand your customer base. As always, relationships matter and they matter the most. So that's first priority. And then we are in the virtual and viral, So think in terms of whatever it is that you were doing before that you were marketing, how you can be marketing it virtually and virally, and build up that new muscle and learn how you can leverage those things and take it incrementally. Practice one thing that you can do every week that's building your muscle in being more virtual and more viral. And as we've mentioned before, we believe in servant leadership, and this is an opportunity to serve. And people will remember you by the service that you did during this time. And that in itself is a way to market, because remember, people and customers don't buy what your product, what it is, or how it's built. They buy you, and you have an opportunity to be marketing yourself throughout this COVID-19.
Okay, the last step that we want to, and then we'll take questions after this. We want you to act, but we don't want you to overreact. I mean, it's a fine line, I know. But if you go through this process of leading, thinking, planning, and then acting, that will help you in terms of not overreacting. Of course, if you're still operating, you should be enforcing safe working conditions and postponing any of the high-risk activities. And just as importantly, you're finding that our governor is being heralded as one of the top governors right now because of the actions that he took to help protect us. And so we have an obligation as leaders to follow the published guidelines, not to abuse them. The best advice I can give you, if there's anything out of this that you walk away with, is that you plan for the worst case scenario, even if it means that you have to file for bankruptcy. And then you build from there. You determine, okay, how do we move ahead and how do we go forward from here? You could start the plan there, and that may be a very low probability, and then you start looking at other ways to plan to help yourself through the COVID virus time period before you actually get to the recovery, and then you embrace planning for the recovery period. We strongly encourage you to get help when and where you can. I mean, Lisa brought that up before. There's plenty of resources out there. There's plenty of people, just like we are. We're offering services for free. We're offering strategic planning sessions for you for free. And if you haven't, you should be taking advantage of these things. There's a lot of expertise out here, and people are demonstrating a level of empathy not seen since last major wars. And this gets down to what our final message to you is that this is an opportunity for you to lead. And in leading, we want you to be thinking, planning, and acting, and doing it well. And Peter, so that concludes our presentation. I think we have time for questions, if you want to moderate those.
Perfect. Thanks again, Paul and Lisa. We'll now begin with questions and answers. Again, if you have a question, please type it in the chat box, and we'll do our best to get the necessary information over to you. Paul and Lisa, first question we have is, how can businesses deliver better outcomes during a time of crisis like this?
How can businesses build better outcomes during a crisis like this? Well, really the theme behind this is to plan. And part of the planning process is doing your homework and or research, especially now that you have time, and then going through a deliberate process of planning and looking at not only where you are today in terms of defending your business, but again, positioning it so you can take advantage of the recovery that we're certain to come. And Lisa, do you have any?
No, I think if you're focusing on delivering better outcomes, then you have to do the work up front, of which requires you to really thinking through the whole thing in regards to collecting collecting the feedback from, if you have a product and you're looking at the customers and what it is, getting their input, evaluating either the product in and of itself or the service. We see a lot of business owners hesitant to be asking for feedback. And it's one of the greatest tools that you can be using in your evaluation, be in a continuous learning cycle. That could even start, in the near future, be planning on what it is that you could be asking your customer and client base as to the products that you offer, how they could be enhanced or advanced, what you're doing right, what you can improve. And then you take that in and you have to then adapt to that. You have to look for the things that you can do to change it so that ultimately your consumer, your customer, your client is having a better experience with your product or your relationship.
Perfect. And I think we can kind of tie this as the next step for that question. And Lisa, I believe you touched on this earlier. Is the next question is, how do I get started on writing a plan for the recovery?
Well, we help. We're very good at that. So I would encourage people to take advantage of our offer that we have right now in regards to a free strategy session. And then also, we really appreciate being in Santa Clarita and our community partners. You talk about Santa Clarita, your chamber, Peter, what you guys have done truly has been exemplary for the information that you've put out there for business owners to take advantage of. I know that I've had some really good success with the SBDC that's located on the COC campus at the University Center. And if you look at their website, they're offering free classes right now for business owners. I think they always have. They're having a webinar every single day at 3 p.m. So not only are they there to help you navigate through the SBA loan process, through the PPP, the payroll protection plan program that was just released and you're able to apply for, but they're offering an abundance of free classes as well that start with business planning and all the way up. So take advantage of what we have in our community and just start somewhere. Start with step one.
Perfect. Paul, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, we'll be hosting a 90-day workshop here in the first part of May. So any of those that are registered will be sending a follow-up email with some other resources to paper resources. So we'll have some attachments that you can use that would be talking through crisis management during a crisis like this, as well as a communication plan in a crisis like this. So if you're registered for this, you'll be receiving that. And then we'll also be telling you that we'll be hosting we call it Growth Club, and it's a 90-day planning workshop. And we'll focus especially on the first 30 to 45 days. But we'll also help you think through what do you need to be doing today to position yourself for the recovery that's for sure going to happen. And we're advising clients that you ought to be really looking at the fourth quarter in terms of starting a recovery and what you can do to stimulate your own business and get back into the marketplace.
Thank you both. Is there a model that you could recommend to assess potential risks and redefine responses during the event of a crisis?
Yes, I mean, we can use models, and we could certainly, I'll tell you what, we'll include that to the registrants about actually going through a risk profile and what you can do in terms of your business. But yes, there are those, we do have those, and we can provide that as an attachment to the email going back out to the registrants. That would be helpful for them.
Perfect, thank you. This next question, and I think I got to pay attention to the answer to this one, is how do I stay focused while working from home?
Right.
Oh, good one. Go ahead, Lise.
Yes. Well, I think that you first need to create a space in which it's the most ideal it can be, that, hopefully it's in a place where you won't get a lot of distractions or interruptions. But I've had a business over the years in which I've had to have a home office for more than a decade and have children and a dog. And so there's the coming and going of everything. But I try and have a space in which is reserved just for my work. I think a long time ago, you know, you kind of merge and go into other rooms, and it could be a dining room table or it could be a living room. But it's better to have one particular place in which you go to that's going to help you from a mental health perspective, because that when you walk into that place, you know that that's just for work. And then there really are techniques in which we can physically incorporate into staying focused. And I'm a big believer in meditation. I'm a big believer in understanding our biology and working with that, meaning that we're good for about 45 to 50 minutes of work, and then we've got to stand up, we've got to do some stretches, we've got to do a brief meditation and get back to then the work. But there's definitely things that you can find online in regards to staying focused, but it's also being good to yourself at this time as well, and favoring progress over perfection. There's a lot going on. So it actually is appropriate to be compromised in how we stay focused right now. But there are many apps out there right now that you can be downloading that are free, that will help you with mindfulness and meditation, and are specific to just having focus and building up what it is that you can do to stay focused.
Thank you. The next question I've got is, are there any types of reactive mistakes that businesses make, or I guess can say commonly make, in a time of crisis?
Yes. I mean, what we have seen, oftentimes the most common is that they immediately let their people go. That's one. Two is that if they do direct them to work from home, they're under communicating. They aren't communicating enough with them. Three, they oftentimes will, it was that analogy I used before, that you have a tendency to freeze when you're in crisis. And so it's much like what we teach soldiers when artillery's incoming. You can't freeze. You have to act. You have to move to a active defensive position. And so what we see is that they freeze, and then it's hard for them to work themselves out of it. Yet, like in crisis, what we've talked about, there are a lot of opportunities. So all those things that in your business you've wanted to do over time, and because of your focus on the operations piece of it, we often jettison things like training or educating yourself. These are things that we find now people are not taking advantage of that. And now some of it can be overwhelming, like we talked in the beginning, is that we see so many things being offered now in terms of webinars or things that are being passed out on a free basis, that you can become overwhelmed. It's like, again, being oversaturated. So you have to be disciplined in your approach about what is it that I'm trying to seek out, and then you'll find it. And then go to people like us who have, for example, if you're in a mid-sized business, I strongly encourage you to look up the McChrystal Group on the web. They have just a tremendous amount of leadership material that's practical and doable. General Stan McChrystal, he was a bunkmate of mine at Fort Bragg, and just a tremendous thought leader in terms of not only leadership, but in business practices that he puts on his web. He's offering free webinars, and you can just learn an awful lot from a source like him. So these are things that you could be doing right now. I don't know, any other thoughts, Lisa? Or?
No, I think communication. I think we see a lot of people just freeze, and we can talk to clients and business owners that will ask, when's the last time you checked in with their team? And it may be a week or two, because everybody's working remotely. But it works against you in a time like this. And like I said, important to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and just communicate as often as you can. And it's going to be able to enhance this experience for everybody.
Perfect. Paul and Lisa, I'll end with this question. What would be your biggest piece of advice to all businesses out there?
Yeah, I think it could be summed up in lead, think, plan, and act. And it's really, we're using that almost as a tagline now because we know the importance of that. And if you follow it and you're deliberate in your approach, you're not only going to get through this crisis, but you're going to thrive when the recovery comes about because of how much strength you've gained just by enduring this, and then thinking through, planning, and acting in the future.
Yeah, and I would say to take stock of what you, as a Californian and an SCV resident, has endured. You know, I mean, what we face in California between earthquakes and here with fires, where SOG is strong, we've been through a lot. We've endured a lot. We are resilient. So I would say take stock in that, invest in thinking outside of the box, planning, keep your head up, choose to be a role model for those you love and lead right now, and have faith. And, you know, I would say, as I mentioned before, OneTrueNorthCoach.com, we do have a COVID-19 resource page. And SCV Chamber is on there as well in regards to a link for all of their resources. But we're going to be adding to that continuously to make it easier. We've heard from some business owners who have said, thanks for letting me know about all the information that's out there, but there's so much information. I'm at choice overload. I don't know where to start. So this is our way to try and make it easier because we have ourselves experienced all of those links that are on there and found some positive outcomes from doing it. I myself called that SBA phone number. We turned in the application recently for the SBA loan. 7 times it took me to get through the 800 number, but I finally reached somebody with my husband and spent 45 minutes on the phone with them. This is for the disaster relief SBA loan. So it told you that don't give up, keep at it. We got through to somebody, and I have to say they were great. They were like a social worker who knew about SBA loans because they were able to really guide us through that. So we're here for you. We thank you, SCV Chamber, and thank you, Peter, for hosting this as well.
Perfect. Thank you again, Paul and Lisa Rajay with One True North. This was a very valuable webinar for everyone, and thank you to everyone who was able to join. If you have not yet registered, please visit our events page to register for our upcoming webinars. And for additional business resources, please visit our website, scvchamber.com, under the COVID-19 tab for more details. And as Paul and Lisa mentioned, they have their COVID-19 resource page as well. So, you know, check everything that's out there. You never know where you can find the best information that's suited for you. Thank you again for joining us. Please be safe, be healthy, and let us know how the Chamber can help you. Thank you.